They thought humanity was fragile, soft-skinned creatures from a poisoned world, barely scratching at the edge of the stars. But when the fleets of the galaxy declared war, when the first volleys burned Earth's skies and alien soldiers set foot on human soil, they learned something no archive, no prophecy, no strategist had warned them of. We were not prey. We were predators from a death world. Every city became a fortress, every forest a hunting ground, and every human, no matter how broken, no matter how outnumbered, became a weapon the galaxy could never have prepared for. Because you can defeat an army, you can crush a nation, but when you fight humanity, you face the monsters of Deathworld itself. And when the galaxy finally realized what that meant, it was already far too late. So the question remained, echoing in the ruins of their empire. Who truly started the war? And who unleashed the monsters? The war hadn't come yet. For Captain Elias Vance, morning still began the same way. Before dawn, when the sky over Colorado burned pale silver, and the air carried that mountain chill that seeped straight into the lungs. He ran the same trail every day, boots pounding the frozen earth, the silence broken only by his breath and the crunch of gravel. Out here, he could almost believe the world was still at peace. Almost. He'd spent 15 years in uniform, fought in brushfire wars humanity barely remembered now, skirmishes where drones and orbital strikes did most of the killing. But this peace felt different. Fragile. Like glass balanced on the edge of a table, one careless push away from shattering. He saw it in the classified reports whispered across military channels. He saw it in the new shipyards stretching into orbit, steel scaffolds cradling hulls 3 kilometers long. He saw it in the way the president's speeches carried too much steel, too much practiced calm. And he saw it in the stars. Because Elias had been to the colonies, to the edges of human space where freighters vanished, stations sent only silence, and rumors of shadow fleets spread like wildfire. The galaxy was watching them, probing, waiting. And if the aliens decided humanity didn't belong in the stars, well, Elias had heard the stories. Deathworld, they called Earth. A cursed rock of storms and fire, of oceans that could swallow whole fleets, of beasts that had nearly wiped us out before we learned to tame them. To aliens bred on tranquil worlds, it was a nightmare made real. But to us, it was home. Elias never told his daughter the darker parts of it. To little Marin, the world was still bright. She'd wait for him at the end of the trail every morning, standing barefoot on the porch in her pajamas, hair tangled, clutching a mug of hot chocolate her mother insisted she wasn't old enough for. "You're slow today, Daddy," she teased every time. And he would smile, scoop her up, and let her ride on his shoulders back inside, pretending the weight of her was nothing. Because compared to the weight he carried in silence, it was nothing. He knew what was coming. Humanity had always been underestimated, dismissed as reckless upstarts. But something, some coalition, some empire, was pushing now. War was no longer a question of if, only when. And in the quiet moments, when the house was dark and his daughter asleep, Elias stood at the window, staring at the stars with a soldier's eyes, wondering which of those distant lights would one day send fire raining down on Earth. The call would come. He knew it. And when it did, he would not be running trails in the mountains anymore. He would be running through fire, through blood, through the kind of nightmare that only a death world could breed. Because the galaxy thought humanity soft, thought them fragile. They had no idea what it meant to corner a species forged by storms and predators, sharpened by hunger and hardened by loss. No idea at all. Elias kissed his daughter's forehead that night, tucking her in beneath the glow of plastic stars on her ceiling. She whispered sleepily, "You'll always be here, right?" He couldn't answer. Not truthfully. Instead, he just held her hand until her breathing slowed, until she slipped into dreams. And outside, unseen beyond the dark horizon, something moved in the cold void. Fleets gathering, claws sharpening, shadows stretching toward Earth. The glass was about to shatter. And when it did, Elias Vance would not just be a soldier. He would become the monster the galaxy feared, the monster it had awakened too late. The war did not begin with declarations. It began with silence. First, the freighters stopped reporting in. Whole convoys lost somewhere between Mars and the Belt. Then the orbital telescopes caught the flares, sharp, surgical eruptions of fire in the void. And finally, the transmissions came. Not in human tongues, but in a chorus of voices speaking through stolen satellites. The galaxy has endured your kind long enough. Leave the stars, remain on your cursed world, or be extinguished. Elias Vance was in orbit when the first shots came for Earth. He'd been recalled to active command, placed aboard the USC Aegis, one of the new Terran dreadnoughts bristling with rail cannons and plasma arrays. Its hull was still raw steel, plating welded only weeks before, systems barely tested. It didn't matter. Humanity no longer had the luxury of waiting. The coalition of worlds, an empire of insectoid tacticians, crystalline war forms, and towering saurian lords, had decided. Humanity was to be contained, reduced to one planet, chained again to the cradle they had bled so hard to escape. The first wave arrived in force. From the bridge of the Aegis, Elias saw them come. Hundreds of ships, their hulls black against the stars, their engines like burning suns. The tactical display painted them red, blotting out the skies over Earth's orbit. Marin's face flashed in his mind. He forced it away. "All batteries, fire control on my mark," Elias ordered. His voice was calm, but his hands gripped the console until his knuckles whitened. The enemy believed they faced soft creatures. They thought Earth had only just learned war among the stars. They didn't know what it meant to be children of a Deathworld. Rail cannons shrieked. Lances of tungsten, accelerated to near-light velocity, carved through enemy shields. Plasma flared in sheets of molten fire. The Aegis bucked with each volley, its hull groaning like a beast straining against its chains. And then the alien fleets returned fire. Bolts of antimatter split the void. Fragments of human ships scattered like burning snow across the black. Screams filled comm channels before dissolving into static. The Aegis shuddered under the assault, alarms howling as one flank went dark. "Damage control, Section 7. Keep firing," Elias barked. Humans died by the hundreds, then thousands in those first hours. But they fought like no other species the galaxy had ever seen. When ammunition ran dry, freighters rammed enemy cruisers. When shields failed, pilots turned their burning wrecks into weapons, plunging straight through alien formations. Entire crews sang Earth's anthems as their ships lit the dark with fire. And the galaxy began to understand. This was not prey. This was not weakness. This was war the way only a Deathworld could teach it. Weeks passed, and the war spread like wildfire. The colonies burned. Mars fell silent. Jupiter's stations were torn apart, their gas mines igniting like wounded suns. Still, humanity refused to kneel. Every system, every moon, every orbital ring became a fortress. On Titan, Marines sealed themselves in methane storms, using the frozen landscape as cover, striking from beneath the ice. In the Belt, miners turned drill rigs into mass drivers, hurling asteroids at alien battle lines. Even civilians joined the fight, guiding damaged ships into safe harbor, patching hulls with their bare hands. Elias fought battle after battle aboard the Aegis. His voice became iron across the fleet, steady, unshaken, a man who would never yield. But each time he closed his eyes, he saw Marin's face. Protect her. Protect Earth. At any cost. The coalition adapted. They had underestimated the Deathworlders once. They would not do so again. When their second wave came, it was not brute force. It was strategy, coordinated strikes, hunting humanity's weak points. They severed supply lines, jammed communications, sowed chaos among the colonies. Slowly, they began to tighten the noose. On the 5th month of war, Elias found himself at Erebus Station, a mining hub in the Kuiper Belt. Its people had refused evacuation, vowing to hold. The Aegis arrived too late. What they found was silence. Wreckage drifted in the void, civilian transports gutted, habitats split open to the frozen dark. Among the wreckage floated children's toys, books, the remnants of homes shattered in the cold. And something else. Alien soldiers. They had landed ground forces, turning Erebus into a slaughterhouse. Civilians huddled in bunkers, fighting with rifles and mining charges, holding off enemies armed with plasma and exosuits. "Prepare drop teams," Elias ordered. His voice shook this time, not from fear, but fury. The first boots hit ice. Marines surged into tunnels that shook with gunfire. Grenades lit caverns like lightning storms. Humans fought like wolves in their den, every corner a trap, every passage a kill zone. This was not prey. This was not weakness. This was war the way only a Deathworld could teach it. Weeks passed, and the war spread like wildfire. The colonies burned. Mars fell silent. Jupiter's stations were torn apart, their gas mines igniting like wounded suns. Still, humanity refused to kneel. Every system, every moon, every orbital ring became a fortress. On Titan, Marines sealed themselves in methane storms, using the frozen landscape as cover, striking from beneath the ice. In the Belt, miners turned drill rigs into mass drivers, hurling asteroids at alien battle lines. Even civilians joined the fight, guiding damaged ships into safe harbor, patching hulls with their bare hands. Elias fought battle after battle aboard the Aegis. His voice became iron across the fleet, steady, unshaken, a man who would never yield. But each time he closed his eyes, he saw Marin's face. Protect her, protect Earth, at any cost. The coalition adapted. They had underestimated the Deathworlders once. They would not do so again. When their second wave came, it was not brute force. It was strategy, coordinated strikes, hunting humanity's weak points. They severed supply lines, jammed communications, sowed chaos among the colonies. Slowly, they began to tighten the noose. On the 5th month of war, Elias found himself at Erebus Station, a mining hub in the Kuiper Belt. Its people had refused evacuation, vowing to hold. The Aegis arrived too late. What they found was silence. Wreckage drifted in the void. Civilian transports gutted, habitats split open to the frozen dark. Among the wreckage floated children's toys, books, the remnants of homes shattered in the cold. And something else. Alien soldiers. They had landed ground forces, turning Erebus into a slaughterhouse. Civilians huddled in bunkers, fighting with rifles and mining charges, holding off enemies armed with plasma and exosuits. "Prepare drop teams," Elias ordered. His voice shook this time, not from fear, but fury. The first boots hit ice. Marines surged into tunnels that shook with gunfire. Grenades lit caverns like lightning storms. Humans fought like wolves in their den, every corner a trap, every passage a kill zone. Elias led them himself, rifle in hand, his breath fogging in the frozen dark. He moved like a man possessed, fury and grief sharpened into a single purpose: protect the survivors. At one junction, they found a group of civilians cornered, families clutching their children, eyes wide with terror. Between them and survival stood a crystalline war form, its body refracting light, its blades like glass. Elias didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, shield raised, rifle spitting fire. Blades slammed against his armor, sparks raining in the dark. He drove his knife through the creature's core, shattering it in a burst of shards. Behind him, the civilians wept with relief. That night, huddled in the wreckage of Erebus, Elias stared into the eyes of the children they had saved. And he knew. This war was no longer about survival alone. It was about what humanity would become if it endured. But even victories bled them dry. Erebus was saved, but at the cost of half the Aegis's Marines. Supplies dwindled. The coalition pressed harder, pushing humanity to the brink. And still, humans fought. At Saturn, pilots used the planet's rings as cover, darting between icebergs the size of cities to ambush cruisers. At Neptune, submarines rose from the oceans, launching missiles at orbiting warships before sinking back beneath crushing depths. Every battle was desperate. Every battle cost lives. But each left scars on the coalition. Aliens began to whisper of the humans differently. No longer soft creatures, no longer upstarts, but something older, something dangerous. The monsters of Deathworld. Yet the coalition had one final gambit. They would strike Earth itself. Scouts reported enemy fleets massing beyond the Kuiper Belt, larger than anything humanity had yet faced. Dozens of armadas, enough to burn a world to ash. Elias stood on the bridge of the Aegis, staring at the tactical map. Red markers filled the display like a spreading infection. He could hear his daughter's laughter in memory, the sound cutting like a blade. The officers looked to him, waiting. Fear filled their eyes. "What do we do, sir?" He breathed once, steady, final. "We make them understand what Deathworld truly means." The order rippled across the fleet. Every ship, every station, every surviving outpost was to rally to Earth. Humanity would make its stand where it began, where storms and predators had shaped them into the species the galaxy now feared. The battle for Earth was coming, and Elias Vance knew. This would not be survival alone. The sky over Earth burned. From orbit, Elias Vance watched the enemy armadas descend. Thousands of ships, shields overlapping, weapons glowing like a false constellation, blotting out the stars. The coalition had come to end humanity in one blow. On the bridge of the Aegis, silence reigned. Every officer, every crewman knew the odds. This wasn't a battle. It was extinction. Elias felt the weight of it, the countless lives on the planet below, his daughter's laughter, the ghosts of every fallen colony. He had no illusions. They couldn't match the coalition ship for ship. But maybe, just maybe, they could teach the galaxy why Deathworlders should never be cornered. "Transmit to the fleet," Elias said. His voice carried like iron through the quiet. "This is our home. We do not yield. Make every shot count. Make them remember." The order flashed across channels, and the Terran fleet ignited. Rail cannons roared, plasma batteries thundered, missiles streaked like comets. For every alien cruiser that fell, 3 more took its place. Human ships died in fire, but even in death they struck like wolves, tearing chunks from the enemy before going dark. Still, the tide pressed closer. Enemy dreadnoughts lit Earth's orbit with searing lances of antimatter. Cities trembled under the bombardment. It was only a matter of time, until Elias gave the command. "Bring the Deathworld online." The officer hesitated. "Sir, are we certain?" "Do it." From Earth's surface, old silos yawned open. Hundreds, thousands, hidden in forests, buried beneath mountains, sleeping beneath the oceans. Weapons built not for space war, but for Earth's own survival. Nuclear fire, electromagnetic lances, hypersonic swarms designed to pierce any armor. The coalition never expected a species that had already survived its own apocalypse. The sky itself erupted. Flames arced upward, blinding the void. Detonations swallowed cruisers whole. EMPs rolled through the alien formations, frying systems, silencing engines, leaving warships drifting dead in the dark. And out of the chaos, humanity's fleet surged. Fighters darted like falcons, weaving between shattered hulks. Freighters rammed through weakened lines, detonating in sacrificial bursts that tore gaps wide open. On the Aegis, Elias stood unshaken. Every strike was a message, every sacrifice a declaration. We are the monsters you feared. But even as the coalition buckled, their command ship loomed, the Leviathan, a fortress the size of a continent, bristling with weapons, its core shielded by energy fields thicker than anything human fire had yet cracked. If it reached orbit, Earth would burn. Elias knew what had to be done. He locked eyes with his second officer. Set course for the Leviathan. All power to forward batteries. Shock rippled across the bridge. The Aegis was battered, half its systems failing, but no one questioned him. They had followed him through hell. They would follow him into it again. Engines howled. The dreadnought lurched forward, plowing through debris fields, weaving between burning hulks. Enemy fire hammered the hull, ripping steel, flooding compartments. Still, the Aegis drove on. The Leviathan's guns turned. Lances of antimatter streaked toward them. One struck the bow. Half the forward decks vanished in fire. Hundreds died in an instant. But the ship did not falter. Range, Elias demanded. 3,000 clicks. Fire everything. Rail cannons thundered their last rounds. Plasma rivers carved against the Leviathan's shields. The void blazed with fury, but the fortress endured. Alarms screamed. The Aegis was dying. Elias stared at the display, then at the stars beyond. He thought of Marin, her tiny hand in his, her whisper, "You'll always be here, right?" No, he realized. He wouldn't. But maybe she would. "Helm," he said quietly. "Ramming course." The bridge froze. "Sir." "Do it." His voice was steel. "If this ship falls, Earth rises." The Aegis screamed forward, engines burning every last drop of fuel. The Leviathan loomed, its shields glowing, its weapons charging for one final strike. Inside the bridge, Elias stood tall. His crew, those still alive, looked at him, and none turned away. If death was to come, they would meet it like humans, with fire. The distance closed, 2,000 clicks, 1,000, 500. And then the Aegis struck. The impact tore the void apart. Steel met shield, engines ignited, and the dreadnought became a spear of burning fury. Shields collapsed in a cascade of sparks, hulls ruptured, reactors screamed, and then the Leviathan's core detonated in a sunburst of fire that swallowed the stars. The shockwave ripped across orbit, flinging debris in all directions. Alien fleets faltered, their command shattered, their courage burning with their fortress. On Earth below, civilians looked up and saw the sky ablaze. And they understood. Humanity had not bowed. Humanity had risen. When the fire faded, silence fell. The Leviathan was gone. The Aegis was gone. And with them, Elias Vance. But in that silence, across alien channels, a single truth echoed like thunder. They are not prey. They are Deathworlders, and they will never yield. The battle was not over. Humanity had bled, humanity had burned. But the galaxy had seen, and the monsters of Deathworld had been unleashed. The coalition fleets retreated, dragging their dead and shattered with them. But whispers spread faster than their ships could flee. Whispers of a single human captain who turned his dying world into a weapon. Whispers of a death world where even extinction could not break the species that rose from its storms. and the galaxy asked itself, trembling, if this is what humans do when cornered, what will they become when they rise? The war was not won in a single battle. It stretched on, months into years, stars into graveyards of fleets. But something had shifted, something irreversible. The galaxy had seen humanity unleashed, and it could not unsee it. On devastated colony worlds where the soil was still black with ash, alien civilians whispered of the Terrans who refused to die. They spoke of soldiers who crawled through fire to drag their comrades free, of medics who patched the wounded with their own blood, of engineers who turned wreckage into weapons. They told stories of humanity's monsters, born from a death world, yet carrying in them something more terrifying than claws or teeth: willpower, defiance, hope. Even the enemy began to waver. Entire units surrendered, not because they could not fight, but because they no longer understood why they should. They looked at humanity, scarred, grieving, bloodied, and realized they were staring at an abyss that could not be broken. For every human who fell, 10 more rose. For every city lost, another was rebuilt. And for every threat of annihilation, humanity answered with a single truth: we are still here. Commander Elena Navarro stood at the viewport of the flagship Resolute. The stars stretched endless and cold before her, littered with the wreckage of a battle that had nearly consumed them all. Around her, the crew worked in silence, their faces pale, eyes heavy, but alive. She remembered Earth. She remembered the first day of fire. And now, staring at the fractured fleets of an empire that had once promised her extinction, she whispered what every human across the stars now knew in their bones: they thought they could end us. But all they did was show us who we truly are. Her words carried. Through the comms, through the survivors, through the wounded huddled in medbays, and the children waiting in bunkers light years away. It became more than words. It became a vow. When the alien empire finally sued for peace, they did not do so with the arrogance of conquerors. They came as supplicants, their envoys trembling, their voices unsteady. They had seen humanity fight with teeth bared, with grief burning brighter than plasma fire. And they knew no empire could survive the storm Earth had unleashed. But humanity did not destroy them outright. Not this time. Instead, humans rebuilt what was broken. They shared food with the hungry, medicine with the wounded, and fire with those who shivered in the dark. For where others had brought war to enslave, humanity brought survival, not just for themselves, but for all who had suffered under the old empire's tyranny. It was not forgiveness. It was something sharper, a reminder. Across the stars, survivors remembered the warning etched in ash and fire. When you make war with humans, you face the monsters of the Deathworld. And yet, those same monsters could reach out a hand, lift others from the ruins, and prove that even in the darkest abyss, there was light. Generations later, when children of alien races learned history beneath alien suns, they did not only study dates of battles or the names of fallen empires. They were told stories of the night skies lit with burning fleets, of the unbroken Terran lines in the dust, of a species that should have fallen, but rose instead. And always, the stories ended the same way. Humanity was tested in fire, and humanity endured. Because no matter how vast the galaxy, no matter how terrible the war, the monsters of the Deathworld were not its curse. They were its hope.